welcome back to Jana's Joyful Journey. Used to be Jana's Journey, but a lot of other people already have that name, and I think joyful is a good word because I want to focus on the joy of recovery and just being on this journey of life we're in. So before I start this video, I need to put a huge trigger warning. I'm going to talk about abuse, specifically domestic violence, sexual abuse, rape, and stuff along those lines. Any type of abuse you've been through, if you haven't worked through it or you're too worried this is going to trigger you, click away. I'll try not to go into too much detail, so stick around if you can. So the reason why I want to talk about this is because October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And 9 years ago, I was in an abusive relationship. So I'm going to talk about that right now. I had met this boy, towards the end of my junior year, I think, like the summer before my senior year. And this was back when I was already drinking and doing a little bit of drugs, smoking weed and stuff. So I was already kind of on a dark path when I had met him. I met him like at a party or something, and I thought he was cute. Like I said, physical attraction is usually the first thing that draws us towards somebody. And he actually ended up cheating on his girlfriend with me, so that should have been a red flag right away that I should have just ran because, hello, once a cheater, usually always a cheater. But I was like, whatever, just break up with her and be with me instead. So that's what he did, and he had been with her for several years. He broke up with her. We started dating. Everything was fine at first. We hung out a lot. I spent a lot of time with his family. I really enjoyed. But he would start verbally abusing me, calling me names. But it was more like a joke, like to make other people laugh. But it was at the cost of my own insecurities. Like he would comment on my weight a lot. That's another trigger I should put is weight and eating disorders, because this is when my eating disorder really started to get bad. So he would call me fat, he'd call me annoying, he'd call me a bitch, he'd call me the C word. So there's a lot of verbal abuse. And then the physical abuse came later. He was a wrestler, so he's really strong. He would wrestle with me, but I'm a very weak person, and he'd pin me down, and I would scream and cry and ask him to let me up. He's like, you got to do it yourself. You got to get yourself out of this. And he'd try to treat it like a wrestling match, like when they pin someone down and the other person tries to escape, and I literally couldn't escape, and it would give me panic attacks, and I'd start hyperventilating. He'd make me have sex with him when I didn't want to. He'd make me just do whatever he wanted, and I was trapped. I felt like I needed the attention. I wanted the relationship. I would brag about him to my friends like he's such a fun guy. But behind closed doors, he was very controlling. And yeah, this went on for months. Like, we were only together for a couple months, and then we had broken up. But I would still see him almost every single day. So the average victim in an abusive relationship, statistically speaking, will try to leave the abuser again and again and again. 7 to 12 times before they're finally done for good, and that's if they're ever finally able to escape that relationship. I tried to leave him several times. I want to say it was at least 7 times where I'm like, I'm done with you, like I can't take this anymore, but then I'd go back. And the first time we had broken up, he had commented a lot about my weight. He had called me fat a lot in different ways that you can call people fat, but he would just call me fat straight up. And that's when my eating disorder got the worst. I starved myself. I worked out for 2 to 3 hours a day. I'd get home from school. I'd go straight to the gym. I'd just work out and then go home, have a little meal, and binge and purge. I would almost always, every single day, I would throw up. And my mom would see me throwing up, and she'd say, why are you throwing up? And I say, it's acid reflux. And that's what I would justify it as, acid reflux. Because I didn't have to gag myself or anything. It would just come up because I was doing it so much. My body was literally rejecting food. And so my anorexia, my bulimia started really bad around that time because of that relationship. So I had lost 20 pounds in less than 2 months. And I hadn't seen him for most of that time. And then I go over to his house to hang out with his sister, and he's there, and he's like, wow, you look really good. You look so skinny. And guess what? We started dating again. The abuse started happening all over again. The calling me names, making me sleep with him even when I didn't want to. And that's something else I really want to talk about. So the word rape is usually a really scary word. People don't like hearing about it because it's sad and scary. People don't like talking about it because it's embarrassing and traumatic if it happened to you. So I want to talk about that word for a second. The word rape means sexually being forced to do something that you do not want to do, that you do not consent with. It doesn't have to be full-on sex. It can be any type of sexual act. When I was in rehab for drugs and alcohol, my eating disorder, and stuff like that, they taught me about this. My social workers there, they said, have you ever been with a man and it was getting intimate and you liked him, but you just didn't want to have sex, like you just weren't in the mood, or that wasn't something that you were wanting to do, and he pressured you into it and you did it because you liked him or you just wanted to make him happy. But even if you said no once, like, oh, I'm not in the mood, or no, let's do it tomorrow, or I'm too tired, I'm just not feeling it tonight. Even if you don't want to do that, but things progress, gets hot and heavy, whatever, and then you have sex, and then afterwards, say you enjoyed the sex, say you liked it, say you orgasmed, that's still rape because you did not want that in the beginning, and you were forced to do something that you didn't want to do. And people don't realize that. I have been raped several times. I was raped by that boyfriend. I was raped a year after I had broken up with him by his brother. I was also under the influence, and so I figured it was my own fault for being high. I shouldn't have been high. Maybe I would have had more strength to get out of that situation. It was not my fault. I know that now. And I said no several times. And there was parts where I even enjoyed it. But that doesn't make it okay. That doesn't mean that I wasn't raped. And I talked about this when I was in rehab, when I got therapy. I just want to emphasize the importance, you guys, of taking this stuff seriously. Of not saying, oh, I slept with him, I didn't really like it, I didn't want to. That's not okay. If you were ever in a situation where you were forced to do something you didn't want to do, that is molestation, that is rape, that is something you need to report. That is something you need to get help for. Just please reach out. Don't be embarrassed, because you're going to heal quicker. Your recovery is going to be so much better the faster you get help. And luckily, it was only like a little less than 2 years after it happened to me that I finally got help for it. But even if it's been 10, 20, 30, whatever years since it happened to you, it doesn't matter. It's still something that needs to be worked through. If you hold that in your whole life and you never get help for it, it's gonna affect you. It's gonna be a trigger for your other addictions, whether you have an eating disorder or you're addicted to drugs or alcohol like I was, or even cigarettes. Even if you don't have any addictions at all, that trauma is gonna affect you until you get help for it, until you get treatment. And I am so glad that I got the help that I did and that I worked through this problem. And I just pray that each of you will work through whatever you're going through to please just reach out and get help. And you're going to be happier, and it's not going to affect you as negatively. I always talk about when you work through your problems, it's such a weight lifted off your shoulders, but also you don't have to work through them again. Let me explain. So you need to go into depth about every little detail and every horrible thing that happened to you with a trained professional, psychologist, social worker, whatever it is. You need to work through that with them, but then you're free of it and you don't have to revisit it. And if you ever want to talk about it with somebody it's not as traumatizing to bring up. At least for me, that's my experience. And so I hope you guys will get help. I'm going to leave some links in the description to domestic violence websites and hotlines that can help if that's what you're going through, and other links that can help with any type of problem you have. And I really hope that helps you guys. And thank you for listening. That's just a little bit of my story with that. I could go on with more, but I feel like that's all that I really need to share right now. My baby is crying, so I'm gonna go check on him. Thank you so much for watching, guys. It means a lot to me, all the support I've gotten in just less than a week I've been on here. Your comments are amazing. That's the next video I'm going to do, is a Q&A. So leave me some more questions if you'd like, and subscribe, and I just pray that you guys can all get the help you need with whatever you need help with, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye guys. So I was looking over the video I made, and I realized a really important part that I left out, which is the PTSD that comes with this type of abuse. So I have PTSD, obviously, from the different types of abuse, and from this relationship specifically, I just wanted to share a specific example of something that had happened to me. So a few years after I was out of this relationship, I had moved away, I had already gotten treatment for this relationship. So it was like 3 or 4 years later, I'm in a new relationship with a great guy who would never hurt me in any way, such a sweet guy. We're just hanging out at my apartment, and he like starts tickling me, you know, just flirting, whatever. And I'm like laughing, and then I'm like, stop, and he keeps tickling me. I'm like, please stop, he keeps tickling me. And then like this switch just went off, and I started just crying, just like weeping. He like pulled away, like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, like what's going on? And I'm like, I don't know, like but then I figured out later that had triggered that trauma within me. And I felt like he wasn't going to stop. I felt like I was not in control. I felt like I was being abused. Even though he wasn't, it triggered that within me. And that's something weird about PTSD, is like the weirdest, most random things can trigger it. And sometimes you don't know right away that that's what it is. So I'm glad that I was able to connect the dots and tell him, like, hey, like I told him later, once I figured it out, like, hey, I was in an abusive relationship, and he would pin me down and not stop when I asked him to stop, and I didn't think you were gonna stop, and it scared me. And he's like, that makes so much sense, and I'm so sorry. I got cut off there at the end of that video because my baby was fussing. But yeah, I just want to share that experience of one example of PTSD I've had. So there is help for you out there, and I hope and pray that you guys get it. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.